The bullet grazed her shoulder as she dove behind the overturned stagecoach. And in that moment, Sarah Zimmerman realized she might die on this dusty New Mexico road without ever telling anyone the truth about why she had run. The year was 1878, and the high desert sun beat down mercilessly on the scene of chaos surrounding her. 3 masked men had ambushed the stage just outside of Pinos Altos, a small mining town nestled in the Mogollon Mountains. And now, Sarah pressed her hand against the bleeding wound on her shoulder, trying to stay conscious as gunfire echoed around her. She had been traveling alone, which her father back in Boston would have called reckless. But then again, her father had also tried to sell her into a loveless marriage to settle his gambling debts. At 22 years old, Sarah had decided her fate belonged to no one but herself. She had taken what little money she could scrape together from selling her mother's jewelry and bought passage west, hoping to find work as a schoolteacher in one of the growing settlements. The advertisement she had seen promised opportunity and a fresh start, and Sarah desperately needed both. The stagecoach driver lay motionless in the dirt, and the other passenger, an elderly merchant, had his hands raised in surrender. Sarah could hear the bandits arguing amongst themselves about what to take, their voices rough and threatening. She felt dizzy from the blood loss, her cream-colored traveling dress now stained crimson, and she wondered if this was how her story would end before it had truly begun. Then she heard different gunfire, sharper and more precise than the chaotic shots from the bandits. A voice rang out, clear and commanding. "Drop your weapons and step away from the stage." Sarah risked a glance around the edge of the overturned coach. A man sat astride a beautiful paint horse, his rifle aimed steady at the bandits. He wore the dusty leather chaps and worn boots of someone who spent his life in the saddle, and beneath his wide-brimmed hat she could see a face carved by sun and wind into something striking. Even from this distance, she noticed the calm determination in his posture, like he had done this before and would do it again if necessary. The bandits clearly recognized they were outmatched. One of them fired a wild shot in the newcomer's direction, but the cowboy's return fire sent the man's hat flying. The message was clear. Within moments, the 3 bandits were galloping away into the desert, leaving their ambush incomplete. Sarah tried to stand, but her legs gave out beneath her. The world tilted sideways, and she felt herself falling, only to be caught by strong arms. When her vision cleared, she found herself looking up into the most striking hazel eyes she had ever seen, flecked with gold that seemed to catch the sunlight. "Easy now," the man said, his voice surprisingly gentle given the violence that had just occurred. "You have been hit. Let me see." "The driver," Sarah managed to say, her tongue feeling thick in her mouth. "I am sorry. He is gone." The cowboy's expression showed genuine regret as he carefully examined her shoulder. "But you are going to be fine. The bullet went clean through. We need to get you to town and have Doc Wilson take a proper look." Sarah nodded, then immediately regretted the movement as pain lanced through her shoulder. The cowboy moved with efficient care, tearing a strip from his own shirt to bind her wound temporarily. His hands were calloused but surprisingly gentle, and Sarah found herself studying his face as he worked. He appeared to be in his mid-20s, with dark hair that curled slightly at his collar and a strong jaw shadowed with several days of stubble. "What is your name?" she asked, needing to focus on something other than the pain. "Quincy Xavier, madam." He finished tying off the bandage and met her eyes. "Most folks just call me Quinn. Can you tell me yours, or should I just keep calling you madam?" Despite everything, Sarah found herself almost smiling. "Sarah Zimmerman, and I would prefer Sarah to madam if you do not mind." "Madam makes me feel ancient." "Nothing ancient about you, Miss Zimmerman. Quinn lifted her carefully into his arms, carrying her as if she weighed nothing. "Though I have got to say, you picked a hell of a day to travel this road. These mountain passes have been dangerous lately, with the silver mines drawing all sorts of desperate characters." The elderly merchant had emerged from his hiding spot, shaken but unharmed. Quinn instructed him to take what he could carry and follow on foot. Pinos Altos was only a few miles ahead, and the man could make it before nightfall. Then, Quinn settled Sarah onto his horse, mounting behind her and keeping one arm securely around her waist to hold her steady. The ride into town passed in a haze of pain and awareness. Sarah leaned back against Quinn's solid chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his breathing and the way he adjusted his hold whenever the trail grew rough to keep from jostling her injured shoulder. He smelled of leather and sage, and something else she could not quite name, something that made her feel safer than she had felt in months. Pinos Altos emerged from the mountain landscape like something from a fever dream. The town consisted of a main street lined with wooden buildings, their facades weathered by the harsh elements. Sarah could see a general store, a saloon, what looked like a hotel, and several other establishments she could not identify through her pain-blurred vision. Mountains rose dramatically around the settlement, their peaks still touched with snow despite the summer heat in the valley. Quinn guided his horse directly to a small building marked with a sign that read, "Medical Office." He dismounted and lifted Sarah down with the same careful strength he had shown before, carrying her through the door without bothering to knock. "Doc Wilson," he called out, "I have got a patient who needs you right now." An older man with silver hair and spectacles emerged from a back room, wiping his hands on a cloth. His eyes immediately assessed Sarah's condition, and he gestured toward an examination table. "Gunshot wound, stage robbery gone wrong," Quinn explained, laying Sarah gently on the table. "Bullet went through her shoulder clean, but she has lost some blood." Dr. Wilson nodded, already gathering supplies. "You did good work with that field dressing, Quinn. Now go on and let me work. This young lady needs privacy while I properly clean and stitch this wound." Quinn hesitated, and Sarah realized with some surprise that he seemed reluctant to leave. His eyes met hers for a long moment, and she saw genuine concern there. "I will be right outside," he said. "You are going to be fine, Sarah." The use of her first name sent an unexpected warmth through her chest, something that had nothing to do with the wound. She nodded, and Quinn finally stepped out of the room. Dr. Wilson proved to be efficient and skilled, though the process of cleaning and stitching the bullet wounds was excruciating. Sarah bit down on the leather strap he offered and tried not to cry out. Through it all, she could hear Quinn's boots pacing on the wooden planks outside, a steady rhythm that somehow helped her endure. "You are fortunate," Dr. Wilson said as he finished bandaging her properly. "Another few inches to the right and that bullet would have hit something vital. You will need to keep this clean and change the dressing daily. No heavy lifting or strenuous activity for at least 2 weeks, longer if I say so." "Thank you, doctor." Sarah's voice came out weaker than she intended. "I need to find a place to stay. Is there a boarding house in town?" Dr. Wilson's expression grew troubled. "There is, but it is already full up with miners and their families. Pinos Altos has been growing faster than the accommodations can keep up with." He paused, seeming to consider something. "Let me talk to Quinn. I have an idea if you are agreeable to it." Before Sarah could ask what he meant, the doctor opened the door and beckoned Quinn inside. The cowboy's eyes immediately sought Sarah's, checking to make sure she was all right. The concern on his face made something twist in her chest. "She is patched up and will heal fine," Dr. Wilson said. "But we have got a problem." She needs somewhere to stay and rest for at least a few days, and you know as well as I do that there is not a room to be had in this town." Quinn frowned, processing this information. Then his expression cleared. "She can stay at my place. I have got a spare room and my housekeeper Maria can help tend to her." Sarah started to protest. "I cannot impose like that. I do not even know you." "You know I saved your life," Quinn said with a slight smile that transformed his serious face. "And that I am trusted enough by Doc Wilson here that he is suggesting this arrangement. I promise you will be perfectly safe and properly chaperoned. Maria is as respectable as they come, and she will make sure everything is appropriate." "Quinn runs a horse ranch just outside of town," Dr. Wilson added. "He is right about Maria. She is a good woman who will look after you properly. And honestly, Miss Zimmerman, you do not have many other options right now. You need rest and care, and this is the best solution I can offer." Sarah looked between the two men, her practical nature warring with her sense of propriety. Everything her Boston upbringing had taught her said that staying in a bachelor's home was scandalous, regardless of chaperones. But then again, she had already abandoned propriety when she fled across the country to escape a forced marriage, and something about Quinn's steady gaze made her want to trust him. "All right," she said finally, "but only until I am well enough to find other arrangements. And I will pay you for the room and board." Quinn shook his head. "We can discuss that later. Right now, let us get you settled and comfortable. Can you ride, or should I see about borrowing a wagon?" "I can ride," Sarah said, then immediately wondered if that was true. Her shoulder throbbed with pain, and she felt light-headed from the blood loss and the doctor's ministrations. "We will take it slow," Quinn assured her. "My place is only about 3 miles from here. I promise to get you there in one piece." True to his word, Quinn kept the pace gentle as they rode out of Pino's Altos toward his ranch. Sarah tried to stay upright and independent in the saddle in front of him, but her body had other ideas. Gradually, she found herself leaning back against his chest again, drawn by both exhaustion and the strange sense of security she felt in his presence. "Tell me something about yourself," Quinn said as they rode, his voice a low rumble near her ear. "What brings a woman like you out to the New Mexico territory? You have got Boston written all over you, from your accent to your fancy traveling dress." Sarah surprised herself by laughing, though it came out weak. "Is it that obvious?" "Only completely." She could hear the smile in his voice. "Though I mean no offense. There is nothing wrong with being from Boston. I am just curious what made you leave." For a moment, Sarah considered deflecting, giving him some vague answer about seeking adventure or new opportunities. But something about the steady warmth of him behind her, the way he had unhesitatingly helped her, made her want to be honest. "I was running away," she admitted quietly. "My father had gambling debts he could not pay, and he arranged for me to marry a man who could settle those debts in exchange for a young wife. The man was nearly 60 years old and had buried 2 wives already under suspicious circumstances. I decided I would rather take my chances in the wilderness than spend my life with him." Quinn's arm tightened slightly around her waist, a protective gesture that sent unexpected butterflies through her stomach. That took courage. A lot of women would have felt they had no choice but to go through with it. "I was terrified," Sarah confessed. "I still am sometimes. I have no real plan beyond finding work as a schoolteacher somewhere. I am qualified at least. I attended normal school and taught for 2 years at a girls' academy before my father's situation became desperate." "Well, you are in luck then. Pino's Altos has been trying to establish a proper school for the children here. Right now they have got a few mothers taking turns teaching basics in the church building, but the town council has been talking about hiring a real teacher. The mines bring in families, and those families want education for their children. Hope flickered in Sarah's chest, warm and fragile. Do you really think they might hire me? I know some folks on the council. Once you are healed up, I can make some introductions. Quinn paused. That is, if you plan on staying in Pinos Altos, you might have had other destinations in mind. I had no specific destination, Sarah admitted. Just away. Pinos Altos seems as good a place as any. Better, even. She was surprised to realize she meant it. Something about this wild, beautiful landscape called to her in a way Boston's civilized streets never had. They crested a rise, and Quinn's ranch spread out before them. It was not a grand estate by any means, but it had a practical beauty that appealed to Sarah immediately. A sturdy ranch house sat in a small valley, with a barn, several corrals, and what looked like a bunkhouse nearby. Mountains rose dramatically behind the buildings, their slopes covered in ponderosa pines and aspens. Horses grazed in the pastures, their coats gleaming in the afternoon sun. It is not much, Quinn said, and Sarah detected a note of pride mixed with humility in his voice. But it is mine. Built it up over the past 5 years from nothing but desert and determination. It is beautiful, Sarah said honestly. Really beautiful. As they approached the house, a woman emerged onto the porch. She appeared to be in her 50s, with dark hair threaded with silver pulled back in a bun, and she wore a simple dress covered by an apron. Her brown eyes were sharp and assessing as she watched Quinn help Sarah down from the horse. "Maria," Quinn called out in greeting. "We have got a guest who will be staying with us for a while. She was injured in a stage robbery and needs a place to recover." Maria's expression immediately shifted from curious to concerned. She hurried down the porch steps, speaking in rapid Spanish before switching to English. "Dios mío, look at you, pobrecita. Come inside. Quinn, bring her to the guest room immediately." Within moments, Sarah found herself installed in a comfortable bedroom with whitewashed walls and simple but well-made furniture. Maria bustled around, bringing fresh water, clean linens, and issuing orders to Quinn about fetching this or that. Despite her obvious pain and exhaustion, Sarah found herself charmed by the older woman's no-nonsense kindness. "You rest now," Maria said firmly after helping Sarah change into a borrowed nightgown. "I will bring you some soup later. You need to eat and regain your strength." "Thank you," Sarah managed. "I am so grateful for your kindness, both of you." Maria patted her good shoulder gently. "Quinn has a good heart, even if he does not always show it. When he brings home a wounded bird, we take care of it. Now sleep." Sarah's eyes were already closing before Maria left the room. She drifted into an uneasy sleep filled with dreams of gunfire and masked men. But always there was a steady presence, hazel eyes and strong arms that kept her safe. When she woke, evening light slanted through the window, painting everything in shades of gold. Her shoulder ached, but the sharp agony had dulled to a manageable throb. She heard voices from elsewhere in the house, low and conversational, and carefully sat up to orient herself. A knock sounded at the door. "Miss Zimmerman, are you awake?" Quinn's voice. "Yes, come in." Quinn entered carrying a tray, and Sarah was touched to see that he had changed out of his dusty trail clothes into clean trousers and a simple shirt. His hair was damp, as if he had recently washed. Maria made soup and fresh bread. "She wanted to bring it herself, but I convinced her to let me check on you." He set the tray on the bedside table, and Sarah noticed he had brought enough for 2 people. When he saw her looking, he gave a slightly sheepish smile. "I thought you might not mind some company. But if you would rather rest alone, I understand." "Please stay," Sarah said, surprised by how much she meant it. "I would like the company." Quinn pulled up a chair and handed her a bowl of soup. It was a rich chicken broth with vegetables, and Sarah's stomach reminded her that she had not eaten since early morning. They ate in companionable silence for a few minutes before Quinn spoke. "I sent word to the sheriff about what happened today. He will want to get your statement about the robbery when you are feeling up to it. And I am afraid I have got some bad news about your belongings. By the time I could get back to the stage with some men, it had been picked clean. Whatever you had in your luggage is gone." Sarah's heart sank. She had not had much, but losing even her few changes of clothes and personal items felt like another blow. "I understand. I suppose I should be grateful I am alive. Maria has already said she can alter some dresses for you until you can replace what you lost. She is a talented seamstress." Quinn hesitated, then added, "And please, do not worry about the cost of things right now. We can sort all that out later when you are healed and settled." "You barely know me," Sarah said softly. "Why are you being so kind?" Quinn was quiet for a moment, seeming to consider his answer carefully. "My mother died when I was 12 years old. She got sick with fever, and my father and I were out on a cattle drive. By the time we got back, it was too late. I have always wondered if things might have been different if someone had been there to help her, to get her to a doctor, or just care for her through the worst of it." He met Sarah's eyes. "I guess I figure that if I can help someone when they need it, I should. Maybe that balances out the scales a little." The raw honesty in his words made Sarah's throat tight. "I am sorry about your mother. That must have been terrible." "It was a long time ago." Quinn's expression was distant, lost in memory. "My father passed 5 years back. Left me this land and enough money to get started with the horses. I have built it into something good, I think. Something that would have made both of them proud." "I think it is wonderful," Sarah said. "You should be proud of what you have accomplished." They talked as the evening deepened into night, sharing stories about their lives. Sarah learned that Quinn had grown up on various ranches across Texas and New Mexico, learning the horse trade from his father. He had a gift with animals, a patience and understanding that made him successful where others failed. He specialized in breaking and training horses for the army and local ranchers, and his reputation was growing throughout the territory. In turn, Sarah told him about her childhood in Boston, her love of books and learning, her dreams of making a difference through teaching. She spoke about her mother, who had died when Sarah was 15, and how her father had fallen apart afterward, turning to gambling and drink to numb his grief. "I do not hate him," Sarah said, surprised to realize it was true. "I am angry at what he tried to do, but I understand he was desperate. That does not make it right, but it helps me understand." "You have got a generous heart," Quinn observed. "Not everyone could see it that way." "What is the alternative? Carrying around bitterness and anger forever? That sounds exhausting." Sarah smiled slightly. "Besides, his mistakes gave me the push I needed to change my life. If I had stayed in Boston, I would have spent my whole life doing what was expected, never taking any risks or having any real adventures." "And now," Quinn asked, "what do you want from life now?" Sarah considered the question seriously. "I want to teach. I want to make a home somewhere, a real home that is mine. I want to wake up every morning and feel like my life belongs to me, not to anyone else's expectations or demands. And maybe, someday, I want a family, but on my own terms with someone I choose." "Those sound like good goals," Quinn said quietly. "Worthy ones." Something in his tone made Sarah look at him more closely. In the lamplight, his features were softer, more vulnerable than they had appeared in the harsh sun. She realized that despite his strength and capability, Quinn was lonely. He had built this ranch and this life, but he had built it alone. Over the following days, a routine developed. Sarah spent most of her time resting and healing, though she chafed at the inactivity. Maria proved to be a wonderful companion, full of stories about the local area and skilled at various domestic arts. She taught Sarah some Spanish and shared recipes and remedies she had learned from her mother and grandmother. But the highlight of Sarah's days became the evenings when Quinn would finish his work and come to check on her. Sometimes he brought books from his small library, and they would read together. Other times they simply talked, sharing thoughts and dreams and the kind of honest conversation that builds real friendship. Sarah felt herself healing in more ways than one. Her shoulder improved steadily under Dr. Wilson's care and Maria's attentive nursing. But more than that, she felt her spirit recovering from the fear and uncertainty that had driven her west. For the first time in longer than she could remember, she felt safe. One evening about a week after her arrival, Quinn asked if she felt well enough to take a short walk. Dr. Wilson had been by earlier and pronounced her healing well, though he cautioned against overdoing things. Sarah was eager to escape the confines of the house, so she agreed immediately. They walked slowly toward the corrals as the sun set, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. Quinn's horses came to the fence to investigate, and Sarah laughed with delight as they snuffled at her hands, searching for treats. "This one is called Copper," Quinn said, indicating a beautiful sorrel mare with a white blaze. "She was my first successful training project when I started this ranch, stubborn as the day is long, but smart and loyal once you earn her trust. She is beautiful." Sarah stroked the mare's soft nose, enchanted by the gentle power of the animal. "You ride?" Quinn asked. "I learned as a girl, but it has been years. My father sold our horses when his money troubles started. When you are fully healed, I will teach you again. It would be a shame to live out here and not be able to ride. The countryside is beautiful, and there is a freedom to it that you cannot experience any other way." Sarah looked up at him, struck by the passion in his voice. "You really love it here, don't you? This life, this land." "I do." Quinn leaned against the fence, his gaze on the mountains. "I know it is a hard life sometimes. The winters can be brutal, and there is always work to be done. But there is an honesty to it that I appreciate. You work hard, you treat people and animals fairly, and you build something real. It makes sense to me in a way that nothing else ever has." "I think I am beginning to understand that," Sarah said softly. "Boston felt so constricting, like there were rules for everything and none of them made much sense. Out here, things are more direct, more real." Quinn turned to look at her, and Sarah felt her breath catch at the intensity in his eyes. "I am glad you are here, Sarah. I know the circumstances were terrible, but I cannot help being glad that it brought you to Pino's Altos." "I am glad too," Sarah whispered, and she knew she meant much more than just being glad about the town. For a long moment they stood there, the evening air soft around them, something unspoken but powerful building between them. Then Quinn cleared his throat and stepped back slightly, as if remembering propriety. "We should head back before it gets too dark. Maria will worry." They walked back to the house in comfortable silence, but Sarah's mind was racing. She was developing feelings for Quinn, deep feelings that went far beyond gratitude for his help. She found herself thinking about him constantly, noticing small things like the way he smiled at his horses or the careful way he handled things. She loved his quiet strength, his basic decency, the way he seemed to see her as a person rather than just a woman to be managed or controlled. But what did he feel? He was kind to her, certainly, and seemed to enjoy her company. But was that friendship or something more? And even if it was more, was she ready for that? She had fled one man who wanted to control her life. Could she trust herself to know the difference between that and real love? 2 days later, Quinn made good on his promise to introduce Sarah to members of the town council. Sarah wore one of the dresses Maria had altered for her, a simple blue cotton that matched her eyes, and tried not to be nervous as they rode into Pino's Altos together. The town was busier than it had been during her previous visit, with miners and merchants going about their business. Quinn guided them to a large general store where they found William Harrison, a prosperous-looking man in his 50s who served as the council chairman. "Quinn," Harrison greeted them warmly. "Good to see you, and this must be the young lady I heard about. The whole town is talking about that stage robbery." Quinn made the introductions, and Sarah found herself being examined by shrewd but not unkind eyes. "Miss Zimmerman is interested in the teaching position the council has been discussing," Quinn said. "She has formal training and experience." Sarah outlined her qualifications, trying to sound confident despite her nervousness. Harrison listened carefully, asking intelligent questions about her teaching philosophy and experience with different age groups. "The job would not be easy," Harrison said honestly. "We have got about 30 children in town who need schooling, ranging from 6 to 15 years old. You would have them all in one room, all different levels. The pay is $40 a month, and we can provide a small cabin near the church for your accommodation." $40 was not a fortune, but it was enough to live on modestly, and having her own cabin would solve the problem of Sarah imposing on Quinn's hospitality. "I am very interested, Mr. Harrison. I believe I can handle the challenges you have described." "Well, we have not had any other qualified applicants, so the position is yours if you want it. We can discuss the details with the full council next week, but I can tell you right now that they will approve. When could you start?" Sarah glanced at Quinn, who gave her an encouraging nod. "I am still recovering from my injury, but Dr. Wilson says I should be fully healed within another week or so. Could we say 3 weeks from now? That would give me time to prepare lessons and get the classroom organized." "Perfect." Harrison shook her hand firmly. "Welcome to Pino's Altos, Miss Zimmerman. I think you are going to do well here." As they left the store, Sarah felt like she was floating. She had a job, a real position that would allow her to support herself and use her skills. She had done it. She had escaped Boston and built the foundation for a new life. "Congratulations," Quinn said, and the pride in his voice made her heart sing. "I knew they would hire you. How does it feel?" "Terrifying and wonderful," Sarah admitted. "Thank you, Quinn, for everything. I could not have done this without you. You would have found a way. You are stronger than you think." Quinn's expression grew more serious. "Though I have got to admit, I am going to miss having you at the ranch. It has been nice having someone to talk to in the evenings." "I will miss it too," Sarah said, and realized with a pang that she meant it deeply. The thought of not seeing Quinn every day hurt more than she wanted to examine. They rode back to the ranch, both quieter than usual, each lost in their own thoughts. Sarah knew she should be purely excited about her new job and independence. So why did she feel this strange mixture of happiness and loss? That evening, as was their habit, Quinn came to the sitting room where Sarah was reading. But instead of settling in with his own book, he seemed restless, pacing to the window and back. "Is something wrong?" Sarah asked, concerned. Quinn stopped pacing and looked at her. "Sarah, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "That night when you arrived, you said you wanted a family someday, but on your own terms with someone you choose. Do you still feel that way?" Sarah's heart began to beat faster. "Yes. Why do you ask?" Quinn came and sat across from her, his expression more vulnerable than she had ever seen it. "Because I have been trying to figure out how to say this, and I keep coming back to the fact that there is no smooth way to do it. So I am just going to be direct." He took a breath. "I care about you, Sarah, more than I should probably admit after only knowing you for a couple of weeks. But there it is. You are smart and brave and kind, and talking with you has become the best part of my day. The thought of you moving into town and gradually drifting out of my life makes me miserable." Sarah's mouth went dry. Wait, let me finish," he said. "I am not asking you to feel the same way. And I know you have got every reason to be cautious about men and relationships after what you have been through. I just needed you to know how I feel. If you want to just be friends, I will respect that. But if there is any chance you might feel something similar, I would like to know. Because I am falling in love with you, Sarah Zimmerman, and I needed to be honest about that." For a moment Sarah could not speak. Her mind raced with 1,000 thoughts. This was too fast, too soon. She barely knew him. She had just escaped one trap and should not be jumping into another. But even as her rational mind listed all the reasons to be cautious, her heart was singing a different song. She thought about the past 2 weeks, about Quinn's unwavering kindness and respect, about the way he listened when she spoke, like her thoughts and opinions actually mattered, about how safe she felt with him, not because he controlled her but because she trusted him, about the way her pulse quickened when he smiled, the way she found herself watching for him throughout the day. "I feel it too," she said quietly. "It terrifies me because it is so fast and so intense, and I am afraid of making another mistake. But when I am with you, I do not feel trapped or controlled. I feel like I can be completely myself, and that is something I have never experienced before." Hope blazed in Quinn's eyes. "Then we will take it slow. We will do this right. I want to court you properly, Sarah. Take you to town socials, go on rides together, give you time to be sure. The last thing I want is for you to feel pressured." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes, overwhelmed by the simple decency of this man. "That sounds perfect." Quinn reached across the space between them and gently took her hand. "I promise you, I will never try to control you or make decisions for you. Your dreams of teaching, of building your own life, those are important and I respect them. I want to be part of your life, but I do not want to be your whole life. Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense." Sarah squeezed his hand. "And I should tell you that even though I am moving into that cabin in town, I do not want to lose what we have been building here. I still want to see you, to talk with you, to spend time together." "I was hoping you would say that." Quinn smiled, that rare, full smile that transformed his face. "Because I have already been trying to figure out excuses to ride into town regularly." They sat there holding hands, talking quietly about what this new understanding meant, until Maria came to shoo Sarah off to bed with a knowing look that made them both laugh. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of preparation and anticipation. Sarah's shoulder healed completely, and she threw herself into getting ready for her teaching position. Quinn helped her move her few belongings into the small cabin the town provided, and together they cleaned and organized the schoolroom. True to his word, Quinn courted her properly. He took her to a town dance where she met more of the Pinos Altos residents and was welcomed warmly. They went on long rides through the mountain countryside, with Quinn teaching her to handle a horse again with patient expertise. They had dinners at the ranch with Maria serving as chaperone and sharing knowing smiles. And through it all, Sarah felt herself falling deeper in love. She loved the way Quinn was gentle with his horses and firm with men who tried to cheat him. She loved how he treated Maria with the respect of family rather than as hired help. She loved his quiet humor and the way he saw straight through to the heart of things. When Sarah's first day of school arrived, she was nervous but ready. 32 children of various ages filed into the schoolroom, eyeing her with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. She knew she had to establish herself quickly or lose control of the classroom entirely. "Good morning," she said firmly. "My name is Miss Zimmerman, and I am your new teacher. I know some of you are wondering what someone from Boston can possibly teach you about life out here in New Mexico. That is a fair question. But here is what I can teach you: how to read well enough to understand contracts so no one can cheat you, how to write clearly enough to communicate with anyone anywhere in the country, how to do mathematics well enough to run a business or manage a household. And if you think those things are not important, then you are not thinking about your future. She saw several of the older boys sit up straighter, their interest caught. Good, she continued. I do not know everything, and I have never claimed to, but I know learning and I know how to teach it. So here is what I propose. You give me an honest chance, work hard, and show me respect. In return, I will teach you everything I can and treat you fairly. Do we have an agreement? There was a pause, then a girl of about 12 raised her hand. What if we have questions about things you do not know? Excellent question. Sarah smiled at her. Then we will figure out the answers together, or find someone who knows. Learning is not about one person having all the answers. It is about knowing how to find answers and think clearly. What is your name? Emma Cooper, madam. Well, Emma Cooper, I think you and I are going to get along well. Anyone else have questions before we start? The day was exhausting but exhilarating. Sarah discovered that teaching in a one-room schoolhouse with children of vastly different ages and abilities was indeed challenging. But it was also rewarding in ways her structured Boston classroom had never been. These children were hungry for knowledge, even when they tried to hide it behind frontier toughness. When Quinn came by that evening to check on her, Sarah was still glowing with the success of the day. She told him about Emma's sharp questions and how young Billy Martinez had struggled through reading his first sentence, the pride on his face making her want to cry. Quinn listened with the complete attention he always gave her, asking questions and celebrating her victories. You are a natural at this, he said. Those kids are lucky to have you. I am lucky to have them, Sarah countered, and I am lucky to have you. She hesitated, then added, Quinn, we have been courting for almost a month now. I think you should know that, I am sure, about you, about us. I do not need more time to know what I feel. Quinn's expression grew intense. Sarah, are you saying what I think you are saying? I am saying I love you, Sarah said clearly. I am saying that when I think about my future, you are in it. I am saying that I do not want to wait any more to start building the life I want, and I want to build it with you. Quinn pulled her into his arms, mindful of her shoulder though it was fully healed now, and kissed her with a passion that made her dizzy. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. Marry me, he said. I know it is fast by conventional standards, but nothing about us has been conventional from the start. I love you, Sarah. I want to wake up next to you every morning and come home to you every night. I want to support your teaching and build this life together. Marry me. Yes, Sarah breathed, joy flooding through her. Yes, absolutely yes. They were married 6 weeks later in a simple ceremony at the Pinos Altos Church, with half the town in attendance. Maria cried happy tears and insisted on making Sarah's dress, a beautiful cream-colored gown with delicate embroidery. Dr. Wilson gave Sarah away, having become something of a father figure to her. William Harrison and several of Sarah's students attended, along with ranchers and miners and merchants who had come to respect both the dedicated teacher and the honest horse trader. As Sarah spoke her vows, looking into Quinn's hazel eyes, she marveled at the journey that had brought her here. 6 months ago she had been terrified and desperate, fleeing a life that would have destroyed her spirit. Now she stood here in this wild, beautiful place, surrounded by friends, marrying a man who loved and respected her completely. The reception was held at Quinn's ranch, now their ranch, with Maria orchestrating everything with joyful efficiency. There was music and dancing and food, and Sarah laughed more than she had in years. When Quinn pulled her aside as the sun set, leading her to a quiet spot away from the celebration, she went willingly. "Happy?" he asked, pulling her close. "Unbelievably happy," Sarah confirmed. "Though I am a little overwhelmed. Everything has changed so fast." "We can slow down any time you want," Quinn assured her. "I meant what I said about respecting your independence. Just because we are married does not mean you have to give up teaching or anything else that matters to you." "I know. That is one of the many reasons I love you." Sarah paused, then asked the question that had been forming in her mind. "Quinn, what do you want most from life, from our future together?" Quinn was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "A life with you. That is what I want most. Not some fantasy or perfect picture, but the real thing. Coming home to you after a hard day and talking about everything and nothing. Supporting your dreams and having you support mine. Building something together that is ours. Maybe raising children someday if you want that. Teaching them to be good and kind and brave like their mother. Growing old together. Still finding new things to talk about, still choosing each other every day. That is what I want, Sarah. A life with you." Sarah felt tears spill down her cheeks, overwhelmed by the simple beauty of his words. "That is exactly what I want too. A real life, a real partnership. Not some fairy tale, but something true and lasting." They stood there as the stars began to appear overhead, the sounds of celebration continuing behind them, and Sarah felt a deep peace settle over her. She had found her place, her purpose, her person. Everything that came before, all the fear and uncertainty, had led her here to this moment. Their life together unfolded with both joy and challenges. Sarah continued teaching, becoming beloved by her students and respected throughout the community. She helped several children who had never expected to get much education discover a love of learning that would shape their futures. Quinn's horse ranch prospered, his reputation spreading until he had more business than he could handle alone. They built onto the house, adding a larger kitchen that Maria ruled over and a library where Sarah could prepare lessons, and Quinn could manage his accounts. They argued sometimes, as any couple does, but they learned to talk through their disagreements with honesty and respect. 2 years after their marriage, Sarah discovered she was pregnant. The news filled them both with excitement and terror in equal measure. Maria was delighted, immediately taking charge of preparations and sharing wisdom from raising her own children. The pregnancy was not easy. Sarah suffered from terrible sickness in the early months, and as she grew larger, she found teaching increasingly difficult. The school board was understanding, arranging for a substitute teacher for the final months of her pregnancy and the weeks after the birth. On a warm September afternoon in 1881, after 18 hours of labor that had Quinn pacing holes in the floor, despite Dr. Wilson's assurances that everything was progressing normally, Sarah gave birth to a healthy baby boy. They named him Thomas after Quinn's father, and when Quinn held his son for the first time, Sarah saw tears streaming down his face. "He is perfect," Quinn whispered. "Absolutely perfect. He has your eyes," Sarah said tiredly, exhausted but happy. "Poor thing." Quinn laughed through his tears. "He has your stubborn chin. We are in trouble." Thomas proved to be a challenging baby, colicky and fussy, but he was theirs and they adored him. Sarah returned to teaching when he was 3 months old, with Maria happily caring for Thomas during school hours. It was exhausting managing both motherhood and her career, but Sarah loved both and refused to give up either. Quinn proved to be a wonderful father, patient, and involved in a way that was uncommon among men of their time. He changed diapers without complaint, walked the floor with Thomas during sleepless nights, and took genuine joy in watching his son discover the world. When Thomas was 2, Sarah became pregnant again. This pregnancy was easier, and she was able to teach almost until her due date. Their daughter was born on a snowy January morning in 1884, a quick labor that had Dr. Wilson scrambling to arrive in time. They named her Caroline after Sarah's mother, and she was a calm, happy baby who seemed to smile at everything. The years flowed by, marked by the rhythms of ranch life and school years. Thomas grew into a serious boy who loved horses almost as much as his father did. Caroline was bright and curious, always asking questions and getting into mischief. Sarah taught both of them to read before they started school, and Quinn taught them to ride and care for animals. In 1887, the town council approached Sarah about becoming the school principal, a newly created position, as Pino's altos had grown enough to need multiple teachers. It meant less classroom time but more responsibility, and Sarah agonized over the decision. She loved teaching directly, but the new role would allow her to shape education for the entire town. "What do you think I should do?" she asked Quinn one evening as they sat on the porch, watching Thomas and Caroline play in the yard. "I think you already know what you want to do," Quinn said. "You have that look you get when you are trying to talk yourself out of something you want." Sarah laughed. "Am I that transparent?" "To me, yes. After 9 years together, I know how you think." Quinn took her hand. "You want to take the job, you are excited about the possibilities, but you are worried about spending less time with the students." "Exactly," Sarah sighed. "I know I can do more good in the administrative role, reaching more children, shaping curriculum and policy. But I will miss the daily interaction with students." "So take the job and find ways to stay connected," Quinn suggested. "Guest teach sometimes, lead special programs, whatever keeps you engaged with the students while also doing the bigger work. You do not have to choose one or the other completely." It was such a Quinn solution, practical and seeing straight to the heart of the matter. Sarah leaned over and kissed him. "Have I mentioned lately that I love you?" "Not since this morning. I was starting to wonder." Sarah took the principal position and thrived in it. She hired teachers, developed curriculum, and advocated for resources that transformed the Pino's Altos school system. Under her leadership, the town developed one of the best school systems in the territory, drawing families who wanted quality education for their children. Quinn's horse ranch continued to grow as well. He took on apprentices, teaching young men the skills his father had taught him. He became known throughout New Mexico and beyond for the quality of his horses and the fairness of his dealings. Together, Sarah and Quinn became pillars of the Pino's Altos community, respected and loved for their integrity and generosity. In 1890, when Thomas was 8 and Caroline 6, Sarah discovered she was pregnant again. The news was both wonderful and daunting. At 34, she was older than she had been for her previous pregnancies, and she worried about the risks. But both Dr. Wilson and Quinn reassured her, and the pregnancy progressed smoothly. Their third child, a daughter they named Margaret Rose, was born in the spring of 1891. She arrived easily, almost too easily after Sarah's previous difficult labors, and proved to be a perfect blend of her siblings' personalities, both serious and playful depending on her mood. The years continued to pass, each one bringing its own joys and challenges. Thomas grew into a young man who apprenticed with his father, showing a natural gift for working with horses. Caroline became an avid reader and student, talking about becoming a teacher like her mother. Margaret was still young, but showed signs of being as stubborn and independent as both her parents. In 1895, as they celebrated their 17th wedding anniversary, Sarah and Quinn sat on their porch watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and purple. Their children were inside with Maria, and for a moment they had quiet to reflect. "Do you ever regret it?" Quinn asked. "Leaving Boston, coming west, choosing this life?" Sarah looked at him in surprise. "Never. Not for one moment. Why do you ask?" "I just want to make sure you are happy. That this life we have built together is enough." Sarah took his hand, threading her fingers through his calloused ones. "Quincy Xavier, you gave me everything I was searching for and things I did not even know to hope for. You gave me freedom and partnership and love. You gave me children and a home and a community where I can make a difference. This life is not just enough, it is everything." Quinn raised her hand to his lips. "You remember that day early on when you asked me what I wanted most?" "I remember. You said a life with me." "I still mean it. Every day I wake up and choose you and this life all over again. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Sarah Zimmerman Xavier." "And you are mine," Sarah said softly. "From that first moment when you rode up and saved me from those bandits, you have been saving me in 1,000 different ways. Not by controlling or protecting me from everything, but by believing in me, supporting me, loving me exactly as I am." They sat there in comfortable silence as the stars began to appear, and Sarah reflected on the unlikely journey that had brought them together. If someone had told her 17 years ago, as she fled Boston in fear and desperation, that she would find this kind of happiness in the wild territories of New Mexico, she would not have believed it. But here she was, living a life she loved with a man she adored and children who filled her heart to overflowing. She had built a career that mattered, made a difference in her community, and created a home that was truly hers. As the years continued to roll by, Sarah and Quinn weathered storms both literal and metaphorical. There were droughts that threatened the ranch and Quinn's livelihood. There were territorial politics that affected funding for Sarah's schools. There were illnesses and injuries, including a bad fall Thomas took from a horse when he was 15 that had them all terrified, though he recovered fully. But through it all, they had each other. They had built a partnership based on mutual respect, honest communication, and deep love. They supported each other's dreams while building shared ones. They raised their children to be kind, honest, and brave, to value education and hard work, to treat others with respect regardless of status or background. In 1898, as New Mexico moved closer to eventual statehood, Sarah was asked to serve on a territorial committee examining education standards. It was an honor and a responsibility, requiring trips to Santa Fe and correspondence with educators across the territory. Quinn encouraged her to accept, helping arrange childcare and managing things at home during her absences. The work was challenging but rewarding, and Sarah found herself helping to shape education policy that would affect thousands of children across New Mexico. She brought a practical perspective informed by years of actual teaching and administration, and her voice was respected and valued. Thomas married in 1900, wedding a rancher's daughter named Elizabeth who shared his love of horses and the land. The wedding was held at the ranch, and Sarah cried happy tears watching her son take his vows, remembering her own wedding day and how far they had all come. Caroline decided to attend the territorial normal school to become a teacher, following in her mother's footsteps. Sarah helped her prepare, sharing advice and encouragement, proud of her daughter's dedication to education. Margaret, at 9 years old, was still finding her path, but showed interests in everything from medicine to ranching to art. Sarah and Quinn encouraged her curiosity, wanting her to have the freedom to discover her own passions. On a warm summer evening in 1902, as Sarah and Quinn celebrated their 24th wedding anniversary, They gathered their family around them on the ranch house porch. Thomas and Elizabeth were there with their infant son, Quinn's first grandchild. Caroline was home from school for the summer. Margaret played with her nephew while Maria supervised, still spry and active despite being in her 70s now. Quinn stood and raised his glass. "I want to propose a toast. 24 years ago, I married the most remarkable woman I had ever met. She was running from a bad situation, wounded and scared, but she had courage that put most men to shame. Over the years, I have watched her build a teaching career that has changed this entire town. I have watched her raise 3 incredible children. I have watched her face every challenge with grace and determination. Sarah, you have given me a life beyond anything I could have imagined. Here is to you, to us, and to whatever adventures the future holds." Sarah felt tears in her eyes as she raised her own glass. "And here is to you, Quinn, for being the kind of partner every woman deserves but few find, for respecting my independence while building our interdependence, for being an incredible father and now grandfather, for showing me every single day what real love looks like." They clinked glasses, surrounded by the family they had built and the life they had created together. As Sarah looked around at all the faces she loved, she felt overwhelming gratitude for the journey that had brought her here. The years continued to unfold with their mixture of joy and sorrow, triumph and challenge. Maria passed away peacefully in her sleep in 1904, and they mourned the loss of the woman who had been so much more than an employee, who had been family in every way that mattered. They buried her in the Pinos Altos Cemetery and planted roses on her grave, knowing she would have loved the gesture. Caroline graduated from normal school and took a teaching position in Silver City, where she met and married a mining engineer named Robert Stevens. Sarah was delighted to see her daughter find the same kind of partnership she had found with Quinn, a marriage based on mutual respect and shared values. Margaret, showing the independence Sarah had always encouraged, announced at 16 that she wanted to become a doctor. It was an unusual ambition for a woman in 1907, but Sarah and Quinn supported her dream, helping her find opportunities to apprentice with Dr. Wilson, and eventually arrange for her to attend medical school back east. Thomas and Elizabeth expanded the horse ranch, working side by side with Quinn to build the business even further. They had 3 more children, filling the ranch house with the sounds of grandchildren that made Sarah's heart sing. As the new century progressed, Pinos Altos changed and grew. The mines that had first brought prosperity began to play out, but the town had diversified enough to survive. Ranching and timber became more important to the local economy. The railroad pushed closer, bringing new opportunities and challenges. Through it all, Sarah continued her work in education, though she gradually reduced her responsibilities as she aged. She mentored young teachers, served on committees, and advocated tirelessly for resources and opportunities for all children, regardless of their background. Quinn remained active in the horse business well into his 60s, though he left more of the day-to-day operations to Thomas. He and Sarah spent more time together, taking long rides through the mountains they both loved, sitting on their porch in the evenings talking about everything and nothing. In 1915, as they celebrated 37 years of marriage, their children threw them a surprise party. The house was filled with family, friends, former students, business associates, and community members whose lives had been touched by Sarah and Quinn over the decades. Speech after speech praised their contributions to Pinos Altos, their integrity and generosity, the example they had set. But the most meaningful moment came when Emma Cooper, now Emma Martinez with children of her own, stood up. "Miss Zimmerman, Mrs. Xavier was my teacher when I was just a girl, Emma said, her voice thick with emotion. I was the first person in my family who learned to read well, and it changed everything for us. I taught my parents to read. I helped my father understand contracts so he would not be cheated. I raised my own children to value education because of what she taught me. And all these years, I have watched her and Mr. Xavier build a life and a family based on respect and love and honesty. They have shown this whole town what a real partnership looks like. Thank you both for everything you have given us. There was not a dry eye in the room as Emma finished speaking. Sarah hugged her former student, remembering that sharp 12-year-old girl who had asked what to do when the teacher did not know something. Look at what she had become. That night, after everyone had gone and they were alone in the quiet of their bedroom, Quinn pulled Sarah close. "Do you remember the day we met?" Sarah laughed softly. "Of course. I was bleeding and terrified, and you rode in like some kind of hero from a dime novel. I took one look at you and knew my life was about to change," Quinn said. "I did not know how exactly, but I knew it with absolute certainty." "I was too scared and hurt to know anything that first day," Sarah admitted, "but I remember the first time I really saw you. It was that evening when you brought me soup and told me about your mother. I saw your kindness and your pain and your strength, and something in me recognized something in you. We have built a good life, have we not?" Quinn asked. "The best life," Sarah confirmed. "Better than I ever dreamed possible when I was running scared from Boston all those years ago." "Do you know what I still want most?" Quinn asked, echoing that long-ago conversation. "The same thing I wanted then, a life with you. For however many years we have left, that is all I want. Every day with you is a gift, Sarah." "And you are mine," Sarah whispered, holding him close. "My greatest adventure, my truest partner, my deepest love." They fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms, surrounded by the life they had built together through courage, love, and unwavering commitment. The years continued to pass, bringing both joys and sorrows as all years do. Margaret completed medical school and returned to New Mexico, opening a practice in Santa Fe where she could serve communities that desperately needed medical care. She never married, dedicating herself to her work with the same passion Sarah had brought to teaching. Caroline and her husband moved back to Pino's Altos when a teaching position opened up, and Sarah had the joy of working alongside her daughter for several years before finally retiring at the age of 65 in 1921. The town held a celebration in her honor, renaming the school Sarah Zimmerman Xavier Elementary in recognition of her decades of service. Thomas took over the ranch entirely as Quinn gradually stepped back, though Quinn could never completely retire from working with horses. It was in his blood, and even in his 70s he could be found in the corrals, gentling young horses with the patience and skill that had made his reputation. They had 14 grandchildren in total, and watching them grow brought Sarah and Quinn immense joy. They told the children stories about the old days, about stage robberies and wild frontier towns, about building something from nothing through hard work and determination. In 1925, as they approached their 50th wedding anniversary, their entire extended family began planning an elaborate celebration, but Quinn had other ideas. One evening he asked Sarah if she would take a ride with him, just the two of them like in the old days. They rode out to a spot in the mountains they had always loved, a meadow surrounded by aspens where wildflowers bloomed in summer and the view stretched for miles. Quinn spread out a blanket and they sat together, watching the sun set in a spectacular display of color. 50 years, Quinn said wonderingly. Half a century together. It has gone so fast, Sarah marveled. I look at you and I still see that young cowboy who saved me, even though we are both old and gray now. You will always be beautiful to me, Quinn said. Every line on your face tells a story of our life together, and I love every one of them. Sarah leaned against him, comfortable and content. Do you remember what you said you wanted most all those years ago? A life with you. And I got it, Sarah. 50 years of life with you, and if I could do it all over again, I would not change a thing. Neither would I, Sarah said softly. Every challenge, every joy, every ordinary moment, all of it was perfect because we faced it together. They sat there as the stars came out, two people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful and lasting. Their love story had started with violence and fear, with Sarah running from one life and stumbling into another. But it had become something transcendent, a partnership that had weathered every storm and emerged stronger. The 50th anniversary celebration was everything their children could have hoped for and more. Friends and family came from across New Mexico and beyond. Former students, now middle-aged themselves, brought their own children to meet the legendary teacher and her cowboy husband. Business associates, community leaders, and ordinary townspeople whose lives had been touched by Sarah and Quinn over the decades gathered to celebrate. But the most meaningful moment came when their children presented them with a gift. A leather-bound book containing letters and testimonials from people whose lives they had affected. There were letters from students who had gone on to college because Sarah believed in them, from families who had been treated fairly in business dealings with Quinn, from community members who had been helped during hard times. Sarah and Quinn read through the book together that night, both crying and laughing as they relived moments they had forgotten, seeing their life through others' eyes. They had not set out to change the world or leave a legacy. They had simply tried to live with integrity, to treat people fairly, to build a good life together. But in doing so, they had touched countless lives in ways they had never fully appreciated. In 1927, Quinn's health began to fail. At 72, he had lived a long and active life, but his heart was growing weak. Dr. Wilson, now retired himself but still consulting, was frank with them about the prognosis. Quinn had months, perhaps a year if they were fortunate. Sarah refused to waste their remaining time on fear or sorrow. Instead, they made every day count. Quinn still went out to see his horses, though for shorter periods. They sat on their porch every evening, talking and remembering and simply being together. Their children and grandchildren visited often, and Quinn took time with each one, sharing wisdom and love. On a warm September evening, Quinn asked Sarah to help him outside to watch the sunset one more time. She settled beside him on the porch swing they had installed decades ago, and they sat in comfortable silence as the sky turned brilliant shades of orange and pink. "Sarah," Quinn said quietly, his voice weaker than it had once been but still full of love, "I need you to know something." "What is it, my love?" "Every single day I have had with you has been a gift. You made my life meaningful in ways I could never have achieved alone. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, and I am so grateful for every moment." Tears streamed down Sarah's face. "You saved me, Quinn." "In every way a person can be saved. You gave me freedom and love and a life beyond my wildest dreams. Promise me you will keep living after I am gone," Quinn said. "Keep teaching, even if it is just your grandchildren. Keep riding. Keep being the remarkable woman you have always been." "I promise," Sarah whispered, though her heart was breaking, "but I will miss you every single day." "And I will be waiting for you," Quinn said. "Wherever we go after this, I will be waiting. We will ride through mountains you cannot even imagine, and I will love you there the same way I have loved you here." They sat there as the stars came out, holding each other, making the most of every precious moment they had left. Quinn passed away peacefully 3 weeks later, surrounded by his family, with Sarah holding his hand. His last words were, "I love you, Sarah. A life with you was everything I wanted." The funeral was one of the largest Pinos Altos had ever seen. People came from across the territory to pay their respects to the honest horse trader who had built a reputation on integrity and fairness. But more than that, they came to honor a love story that had inspired them all, a partnership that showed what marriage could be at its best. Sarah grieved deeply, but she kept her promise to Quinn. She continued to be active in her community, to spend time with her children and grandchildren, to ride through the mountains they had both loved. The sorrow never fully left her, but neither did the joy of having had 52 years with the love of her life. She lived another 15 years, long enough to see her grandchildren grown and starting families of their own. She held great-grandchildren in her arms and told them stories about their great-grandfather, the cowboy who had saved a frightened woman on a dusty road and built a life with her that became legendary. On a spring morning in 1942, at the age of 86, Sarah passed away quietly in her sleep. Her children found her with a smile on her face, and clutched in her hand was an old photograph of Quinn from their wedding day, his hazel eyes bright with joy as he looked at his new bride. They buried her next to Quinn in the Pinos Altos Cemetery, under the mountain sky they had both loved. The headstone read, "Sarah Zimmerman Xavier, beloved wife, mother, grandmother, teacher, friend. She chose courage over fear and love over safety and changed countless lives in the process." And beneath Quinn's name, he asked what he wanted most. He said, "A life with you." Their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren gathered around the grave, telling stories about Sarah and Quinn, keeping their memory alive. The love story that had started with a stage robbery and a cowboy's courage had become part of the fabric of Pinos Altos, a reminder that true love is built not in grand gestures but in daily choices to respect, support, and cherish one another. The school that bore Sarah's name continued to educate generations of children. The Xavier Ranch, run now by Thomas's children, maintained Quinn's reputation for fair dealing and quality horses. And in the hearts of everyone whose lives they had touched, Sarah and Quinn lived on. Their story was not one of perfect people living a perfect life. It was a story of two imperfect people who chose each other and kept choosing each other, through good times and bad, through challenges and triumphs. It was a story about building a partnership based on mutual respect, about supporting each other's dreams while creating shared ones, about the quiet heroism of showing up for each other day after day, year after year. It was a love story for the ages, born in the Wild West but timeless in its truths. And it all started with a simple question and an honest answer. What do you want most? A life with you. That answer, given in sincerity and lived out in practice, became a legacy that touched countless lives and endured long after both Sarah and Quinn had passed from this world into whatever comes next. Together they had built something beautiful and lasting, proving that true love is not about grand romantic gestures, but about the daily choice to honor, respect, and cherish the person you have committed your life to. Their descendants continued to thrive in New Mexico, carrying forward the values Sarah and Quinn had modeled. Integrity, hard work, education, fairness, and above all, the courage to choose love even when fear might seem easier. The story of how they met, how they fell in love, and how they built a life together was passed down through the generations, inspiring others to believe that it was possible to find real partnership, genuine respect, and deep, lasting love. And in the end, that was the greatest legacy they left behind, not buildings or institutions or wealth, but the living example of what two people can create when they commit to building a life together based on mutual respect, honest communication, and unwavering love. From a terrifying moment on a dusty road to a lifetime of shared joys and challenges, Sarah and Quinn had written a love story that proved the best adventures are the ones you share with the person who sees you, values you, and chooses you every single day. Their story ended as all stories must, but the love they shared and the lives they touched continued to ripple outward through time, a testament to the enduring power of choosing courage, choosing love, and choosing to build a life together come what may.